Hello and welcome to the very quick walk through the Rinascimento Kontakt instrument. It's a new instrument from Fluffy Audio, and it is a collection of Renaissance instruments ranging from brass, flutes, keys, lutes, percussion, reeds and strings, and is available from the Fluffy Audio website. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly and give you a brief introduction to how the instruments sound in isolation. I'm just going to be noodling away at the keyboard to give you an idea of what they sound like. There are plenty of demos online about how these instruments sound as ensemble and how they work in context of Renaissance music. I don't write Renaissance music, and I doubt anyone will ever ask me to do such a thing. So I think it's quite important we all have an understanding of what they sound like on their own, and maybe we can have an idea of how they'll fit into the context of the bigger picture, and maybe be able to use them in conjunction with more contemporary instruments. So let's just crack on and go through these in the order that they appear as you get them from the company. You can see here, this is the Kontakt quick load browser, and we've got the Rinascimento down the bottom. And we've got the various sections. We've got brass with a trombone and cornet. We've got flutes with recorders, some pipes. We've got the keys, which is harpsichord organ, a positive organ, and a virginal. We've then got lutes, various lutes and guitars, either with open strings or double strings, and a whole selection of various guitars there. We've then got a single percussion section, which we'll have a little play with in a second. We've then got the reeds collection, the classic crumb horns. Got 3 different crumb horns, alto, bass and tenor, and some other little things, including this lovely zampogna, which is like a bagpipe. That's what I'm looking for, the word bagpipe. A brilliant little instrument if you like bagpipes. And then we've got the string section, which is fairly limited because strings weren't used very much in this kind of Baroque ensemble. So we've got a Baroque violin, a viola, and a hurdy-gurdy. So let's start with the brass, and I'm just going to load up the Renaissance trombone. Here it is on the screen. I've had a little walkthrough earlier with these instruments and shown you how the interface works, but just a quick reminder, you've got key-switched articulations, and each instrument will have a combination of various things like legato, staccato, sustains, etc. They've got programmed monophonic legato, as well as obviously different articulations, in this case sustains and staccatos, and you can program which key they respond to by simply clicking on the key there and then just playing a note, and then you've got your key switches, which is brilliant. You can delete articulations and add new articulations, and every instrument has a range of articulations already. We've got 3 microphone positions, close, mid and far, and you can learn these using your MIDI CC controller. And every instrument has a large chamber or other reverb you can add on top of the original recording of close, mid and far microphones. They do this just to add a little bit of air to all the instruments, and you can choose to turn this off either by sliding the slider to 0 or simply selecting off from the reverb list. The large chamber is what is as default on all of these instruments, but obviously you can resave these under different names if you should want to, and change the chambers to different chambers. And you've got a selection here, theatres, halls, cathedrals, etc. And they're built into the engine. On the left-hand side, sorry, the right-hand side here, you've got a little picture of the instrument, some of the instrument settings, talking about the engine, some remapping options for mod wheel, vibrato, etc. But basically, it's a load up and play. So what does the Renaissance trombone sound like? It's actually a really nice sound. It's a very rich trombone-y type sound. It's not a valved instrument, but it doesn't have any slides recorded or anything like that, because I'm not quite sure that's how they played it. You've got a nice legato there, and that's all nicely natural legato. You've got some staccato. It's quite a nice little sound. And then if you want to, you've got polyphonic sustains, and these all respond to the mod lever as a CC controller for their dynamics. It's got a very interesting tone. It's certainly not like a modern trombone at all. And you can imagine if you just turn the close mic right down, bring the chamber right up, you've actually got really quite a nice kind of choral brass sound here. So, very usable, nice sound. It's got that lovely Baroque sound to it. So what's the soprano cornet have to offer? Of course, the cornet in Baroque times looked nothing like the modern cornet. This is not a valved trumpet type instrument. It's got a trumpety type sound, but you can imagine it's more like a vuvuzela than it is like the modern cornet. And I'll give you an example of what that sounds like. If I just do that now. Interesting sound. Very interesting melody too, but that's a kind of fun little sound. And in this one, you've also got a vibrato section as well. And you can hear the release samples there, you can hear the legato samples, and it's a really quite a lovely sound. And again, it's got lots of air to it, and you can imagine that standing over an accompaniment of some kind. It's also got the staccato phrasing. Which is quite nice. Nice little staccato sound there. So that's the soprano cornet. As I said, nothing really like what we were expecting a cornet to sound like, but actually a very nice sound. The flutes and recorders are really quite outstanding. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to load up a couple of the recorders. So this is the Alto Recorder. They've sampled all the recorders, soprano, sopranino, bass and alto and tenor, and they've shown a picture of them here. They are really beautiful instruments. A number of libraries have got recorders in them. There's, I believe, one by Waves Factory. There's one by Spitfire Audio. Certainly it's got some recorders in it. And these are really lovely and very beautifully sampled. So I'm not going to miss over the legato and go straight to the vibrato ones. And I'm going to give it a little bit more of the chamber and just play some little noodles using the Alto Recorder. So a really sweet sound, full dynamic control as well using the mod lever, and a really pretty sound. The bass recorder is equally as lovely, a lot further down of course. They've sampled really nicely the instrumentalist having a little wobble with the notes, having a little uncertainty with some of the dynamics of the playing, and I think that's a really beautiful sound. Put them together in context, and they do sound really nice. I'm going to skip over the soprano and go straight to the. I'm going to skip over the sopranino and go straight to the soprano recorder. And this obviously is what we're used to hearing in schools these days when everyone plays recorders. A nice high-pitched and very fine-tuned kind of sine wavy recorder. Which is lovely, a really nice sound. And again, they've got vibrato and staccato, and the staccatos are particularly pleasant. Really nice. You might have actually heard more of the keys hitting than the sound. They're actually quite quiet, but they do respond to velocity incredibly well. So those are the recorders. Then we move on to the tabor pipes, and they sound like this. So it sounds more like a penny whistle, works up the top there, and actually sounds really very nice. In fact, you could use that as a penny whistle, and it works very well. You can obviously go into here, click on the little cog button, and this is a legato. I can change that to a polyphonic, and now I've got a polyphonic sustained. Which is great. So it's very easy to control these and go back now to legato. The legatos are very well recorded, as I said before. If you want to do a trill, you can do a trill. Which is brilliant. A lot of these legato instruments these days, we try and do trills on them, they fall apart, the scripting goes wrong. They spent a lot of time getting this scripting right, and that allows you to... You can do those sort of fast playing, and it works incredibly well. So well done to the people who made this in getting that really well done. So those are the flutes, and finally the traversière is a much richer instrument. You know, you're writing the theme tune for the next Robin Hood film there. That's absolutely brilliant. So those are the brass and the flutes. Moving on now to the keys, we've got harpsichords, organs. So I'm going to just go to one of the harpsichords. The harpsichords are very simple. They only have one articulation, and that's the sustain. And you just have to play harpsichordy type sounds, and they are incredibly accurately recorded. My only problem with these is they still respond to the sustain pedal, which is, as a pianist, it gets a bit frustrating because you automatically put your foot on the sustain pedal while playing anything which sounds like a piano. And unfortunately, harpsichords don't have sustain pedals. So it'd be nice if they either just took away this so we can't accidentally hit the sustain pedal in future releases. But the harpsichord is very good. These have all got lovely little release samples. I really can't play harpsichord music. That was quite atrocious. But anyway, that's the sound of the harpsichord. It does sound very good, very authentic as far as harpsichords go. One of the most lovely instruments in this whole set is the organ. The organ has a collection of different pipes, main, various octaves, flutes, cornetto, trumpets, vox humana, etc. And you can click on these and select them, or you can select them using key switches. If I can work out where the key switches were. There they are. They're the key switches down there. So by hitting on these notes, it's way beyond. There we go. I can turn on each of these using the key switches, which is really handy. So if you have got an extra octave down the bottom of your keyboard, you can turn on and off these various stops. So for the purpose of it, we're just going to click on the main stop and just play some notes, and then we'll move on to the various different stops and just hear what they sound like. The church reverberation they've put on this organ is really nice. You can play with the mic positionings and just bring in a whole load more stops here and just see how that sounds. We've now got a couple of pedals down the bottom. Actually, let's put in both pedals. It's got that lovely kind of slightly phasey sound where all the pipes are joined together. And also, if you really want to, if you turn all these off and just have a little bit of flutiness. And the trumpet has also got some really nice harsh. Some really quite nice organs. So the organ is really brilliant. I've actually been using it a lot on other things, and it just works really well. So well done for doing a really brilliant organ there. So let's go back to what the choices we've got. We've then got a little positive organ, and this is very simple. It's just a little fairly simple single piped organ. Imagine like a harmonium really. And this is very simple, but very pleasant to play. Some nice bass tones down there, but also at the top end. really nice little melodies you can play on the top part. So really nice, very simple. All of these are occupying less than 50 megabytes each, so they're very small patches. I'm pretty convinced they pretty much all load into RAM, so it's very convenient to have that. So that's the basic keys. Obviously, the virginal here is also a very interesting little plucked thing, but we'll leave that where it is for the moment. Where this instrument is really very pretty is in the various lutes and guitar sections. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I am just going to load up a arch lute. There's the arch lute. Give it a bit more of the chamber. And we're going to play the sustains and then go through some of the chord options. So a very pretty sound. You know, treat it like a guitar, play it like you would maybe an arpeggiated guitar, and it really does sound incredibly pretty. So you've got those lutes, and you've also got some various guitar models. You can see these almost as the kind of the predecessor to the Spanish guitar. These are double strings, so it's like a 12-string, but it's not, it's 4, so it's like an 8-string guitar. And again, it sounds absolutely beautiful. Very simple, very nice little tone, almost kind of like banjo-esque. These guitars didn't have big resonant bodies like our modern guitars, so you just get the resonance of the string and not much else. So that does sound very, very nice. And then you've also at the bottom here, we've got this theorbo, which is a really long, imagine like a sitar in the Renaissance period. It's got some big bass notes, but it's also got some of the higher strings as well. These must have been an absolute nightmare to tune, but also a pain to play. But it's nice that we have them now in fairly convincing digital form. So this instrument has some nice bass. Lovely rich tone, beautiful to play. Of course, I'm limiting myself to only playing one of these at a time, and I would love to spend time loading these up and layering them all up and making something more musical than just me making stuff up as I go along. But I think these have a lot of potential, and you kind of start playing them, and despite my incapability of playing nice Baroque sounding noises, it's really nice to have this sudden kind of feeling of let's play things in a strange key and strange tones because they just sound very natural. So those are the kind of the lutes. The percussion section is really quite cool. If I turn off the quick load here, you can see the mapping section here. We've got 5 different sections ranging from the bottom. We've got some drums. These are like toms. Got hits, rolls, flams, and then the red and the green are rolls. So the red one is a roll which is controlled by the mod lever. And the green one is a really big roll. And the A flat here is like a swell. And when you take your finger off, it goes a little bonk. So that's the bass kind of drum. The octave up. Slightly higher tom. The octave up. Got a little tambourine, and these are the old tambourines with the skin on them, as well as having the metal bits. So put that into context with the others. You get some lovely little rhythms there. The octave above that. It's more like a field drum, a bit bigger, a bit richer, and that really works well as well. Again, you've got the roll. And they just sound really nice. And then the octave above that. Little tiny taps, so these are probably stick taps on the rim of those drums to give it a little bit more authenticity. So put them all in context, you can really kind of big up a nice Renaissance percussion section. You might want to add some of your own percussion to these, like a big bass drum or something, just to give it a little bit more depth. But as it goes, that's pretty good for me. So finally, almost, we're on to the reeds. I'm not going to go through the crumb horns in all of their glory. I'm just going to load the alto crumb horn and just remind you what a crumb horn sounds like. They look ugly, and they sound pretty ugly too. They are a reed instrument that just makes a really annoying buzzy sound, but it's the kind of annoying buzzy sound that you're used to hearing in all those Renaissance music that you listen to clearly. Maybe in soundtracks to movies and stuff, you might have heard them. They're really quite grotesque, but I'm just going to play some of the crumb horn now, and then move on to a slightly nicer sounding instrument. That's a crumb horn, so let's move away from crumb horns. Lots of crumb horns. There's a little Dolciana here, which is kind of a horn thing as well. If you imagine that if the crumb horn is the equivalent of a English horn or an oboe, the Dolciana is the Renaissance equivalent of a bassoon. Nice little sound. Essentially, it's like a slightly more harsh bassoon. My actual favourite instrument, if you believe it, of this entire set, as I've been sitting playing it, is this chap here, the Zampogna, or Zampogna, or Zampogna, who knows. It looks like a bagpipe, it sounds like a bagpipe. This one happens to be in the key of G, so this bottom octaves of G plays this Lovely drone. And up the top end, you've got a bagpipey thing. So, by combining the drone, that's it. That's the sound of the Renaissance to me. Marching into battle with some drums going pom pom pom, and your zampogna playing that. So that's brilliant. You can layer them up. They are round robin sampled, so if you're lucky, they won't be too phasey, and you could pan them left and right and give yourself some more depth. But I just love that instrument. There are two types of legato, Legato 1 and Alto Legato. They sound pretty much the same to me, but there is a slight difference in the legato scripting, and I just think that's a brilliant instrument. It is just exactly what it says on the tin, and it sounds really, really nice. So the last one we've got here is the string section. I have missed out a whole load on the way through this, but it would have taken all day to have gone through all of them. The last three are the violin, the viola, and the hurdy-gurdy. The violin is a very primitive violin. The picture here makes it look a lot more modern than I think it actually was at the time. It's got gut strings, and those tend to be played without any vibrato, so it's not like the modern violin where they have lots of bending and vibrato and beautiful harmonic playing. This was a very simple instrument. You just kind of scratched it and it played a violin-y sort of noise. And it actually, what they've done with it is pretty authentic from what I can tell from a Baroque violin. Kind of scratchy and violin-y. Out of all of the instruments, this is the most laggy. It has obviously something in the scripting that makes it quite laggy, and it's quite hard to play fast melodies. And I mentioned before that you can do trills with almost all of these instruments. This is the hardest to do trills with, ironically, even though that actually a violin is probably the easiest to do trills on in reality. If I try and play a trill now, I'm actually having to play in front of myself to make that fit. So there's a little bit of a lag in this one, and maybe they'll tighten that up in due course. But it sounds like a violin. What they've got here is they've also got this poly legato where it plays the string down as well. So which is quite nice for that kind of accompaniment sound, which is nice. I like that. It's kind of fun. You've also got the rebowing option. So if you're in legato mode and you want to rebow, you just have to press the G1. Which is kind of nice. So if you need to do some accompaniment. Of course, what you can do with the legato is turn it onto polyphonic using the little cog there. And now you've got a polyphonic violin section which you can rebow as well. In fact, the rebow doesn't work when you're in polyphonic mode. That's a bit frustrating. But there we are. You can do it legato. I mean, you can kill off the legato. And play it polyphonically and have a little ensemble of Baroque violins. The last one I want to go through out of all of the instruments is the Hurdy-Gurdy. The Hurdy-Gurdy is probably the most complicated instrument in the Renaissance period. It was a complex instrument with some kind of strings that are played by a wheel. So if you imagine it's the kind of the ebow of the era, the strings were rubbed essentially by sandpaper, and they were made to make a kind of a scratchy noise. And there's also this thing called a trompette, which is kind of something that bounces around on the strings and gives a kind of a rhythm off. So if I just turn off the quick load and you can see the keys, this is why the keys for the Hurdy-Gurdy look so complicated. You've got this blue region, which is the characteristic grating sound of the strings being played. So it's kind of like a violin, but also a bit scratchy. And then below there, you've got these purple keys, which are the trumpet. So that's what the trumpet does. It's just brilliant, isn't it? And what we've got here is we've got a C, a G, so you can play some harmonies there. So the C is just always which you can then change using these key switches. So you can see down here we've got a selection of various key switches. So key of C is playing that rhythm, C sharp, D. So you can set the key, and then the actual rhythm itself is controlled. Where is it controlled by? It's controlled by these red notes here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different rhythms. So pressing the C sharp, E flat. And you can see there, it's changing these, and these are programmable as well. So you can actually have it so it's completely different. There we are. Great, so you can program that as well, and you can then quantize it and do various other things, change the steps, swing it, humanize it. So this is a full step sequencer here, which plays a rhythm in the key that you select, and it's brilliant. And you also input quantize, so if you're playing in time to a click track, it'll only start the zigging sound in time with the start of each beat or bar, which is great. That is the Hurdy-Gurdy. It's a really quite a horrible instrument, but it fits in perfectly with the Renaissance era, and in conjunction with all the other instruments, it does actually make a convincing sound. So my diagnosis on the Rinascimento is it's a really good library. If you're looking for Renaissance instruments, it is great. I mean, it's the only one out there as far as I know. It does sound very convincing. It's got some really nice level control where you can do various legatos and polyphonic and staccato. It's got some chord options, which I'm going to do in another video. And on the whole, I think it's a really nice instrument. I can see this fitting in to contemporary music. I'm not going to be using it every day, quite clearly, but I see it fitting in. So if you're interested in Renaissance music, this is the library for you. It really is really good. And even if you're not interested in Renaissance music, there's at least 10 or 15 out of these patches, the 26 patches, that I can see being used in conjunction with other more contemporary orchestral arrangements.